He is bald? Apparently he is. The egg is correct, my friends. This is Ibn Wahshiyya, and he is currently writing on the NABATAEAN agriculture. If you're missing context, then go back one video. We talked a lot about history. These videos are effectively standalone just because, well, we're just going to talk about history the whole time. And you can listen to history without knowing the previous part of history. Anyway, the point being, today we are in Egypt. That is where we got to in the last video. We just did the Hajj, and I think we're pretty close to actually coming out as Kasdanian. We have seen the downfall of the Muslim world, the downfall, of course, of the Abbasid Caliphate as a whole, as it is occurring in this time frame. They're losing more and more power. Caliph al-Mu'taz is known as the traitor, but he is currently winning this defensive war. And my god, Kalike is an important sheikdom not to lose, because of course this is the entry point into Anatolia. Currently he is winning that, so good for him. He's also losing this invasion right here for, ooh, that's a big chunk. That is a big chunk that he is losing here. Anyway, my whole point being, we came from an unstable region and we went into the Tulunid Sultanate. And the Tulunids are super interesting. Originally, they were Mamluk governors of Egypt in the name of the Abbasids, but then they declared independence in 868. And while they were put back into the fold, I think around the year 902 or so, we're looking at a period where they did a lot of work, where they changed a lot of how things worked. For example, they moved the capital, but okay, that's maybe not that important. Let's talk a little bit maybe about the economy. The Tulunids knew that the lifeblood of their rule, that everything that mattered was the economy. They sided very proactively with the merchant communities, and they also sided with legal reforms. They built their own private army. Well, private army, you know, there's not really a state entity, but basically they created a new rank and file system. So they effectively decided to side with this direction because it would bring them more wealth, and that could then bring them more independence. Until they were brought back into the fold, they conquered a good chunk of the Levant right here, threatening the Abbasids even more. Like I said, this is a period of contraction for the entire caliphate and, you know, central governance in the Muslim world as a whole. But the point being, those merchants are my favorite merchants in the world. We're going to visit them today, okay? I absolutely adore them, and I hate that nobody cares about them, especially not CK3. But in this particular period, the merchants that were active were not all that much Venice, they were not all that much Genoa or Pisa, they were Amalfi. Amalfi is one of the coolest merchant republics because they are the OGs before everything starts right here, right? Before we have this big commercial revolution, as they call it, which starts around, I believe, like the year 1000, 1100, or, you know, the century there. We were looking at the Amalfites already trying their luck, and they were particularly active, of course, here in their home area in Sicily, but also in Egypt. And it happens that until the Fatimids comes around, they actually have a big influence on Egypt and on the wealth creation and distribution and travel of the Egyptian economy, right? They had a big impact there. And maybe more importantly, they stopped having an impact when the Fatimids came around, because the Fatimids took a different stance. They took an anti-trade, anti-Catholic stance, and well, actually massacred the quarter of the Amalfites in Cairo. It's super interesting because this changed the trajectory of Egypt for good. And you're going to see that in a bit as well. Now, right now, Egypt is relatively wealthy. They are a very complex economy. You can basically expect for the economy, but also for the infrastructure, to be quite far developed. Development is generally looking good. Now, right now, I'm going to settle boundary disputes, pacify the realm at least a little bit. I hate these contracts, but they're better than nothing, I guess. I think in the eyes of Abu Bakr, what he is seeing here is basically just, hey, there is clearly something more to it than being just a puppet of the Caliph, because, well, Egypt is prospering under the new Tulunid leadership. Sadly, not at all, by the way, showcased inside of the game. Like, the Tulunids are complete pushovers. What is this? Come on, 1,000 troops? Are you crazy? Are you kidding me? And, you know, historically, they were much stronger than this. They were able to push into the Abbasids after all. But it is what it is. Oh, and this is actually my first contract scheme. We're so good at it. That's crazy. We start so low, but I guess our skills, my god, you guys are insane. That is so good. Oh, because the scribe here is based on learning. So a lot of diplomacy, I guess, is also based on learning, and everybody here is good at learning, and maybe they're also good at diplomacy, which then gives us a double bonus right there. Man, we are made for contracts of any kind, really. Although, again, I wish that we had more learning contracts. But it is what it is. Ooh, and we have some inner conflict here, but it looks like something very minor. Oh, that's crazy. We got Christian, we got Coptic rebels. That's interesting, because that is also much like the Azarika rebellion in a sense. It would definitely make him think, yeah, maybe the Egyptians don't have everything figured out. What is this war? Just a liberty war. It's not even against the Sultan himself, so it doesn't really matter to us. Look at this. We start at 34. That's insane. This is so unhinged. Yeah, the scholar camp, I think, very easy to do anything with, really. Just, what is this? That's ridiculous. That's so unhinged. Yeah, no, the caliphate is over. He actually lost that war against the Byzantines because he got captured. They reconquered Cilicia. Oh, that is a strong move. That can definitely put the Byzantines back in the saddle here. Oh, and how cool is this, by the way? We're now visiting the St. Catherine's Monastery. An unassuming monastery in the middle of the desert, but with a heavy history. The first monastic structure was, in fact, ordered to be built by Emperor Constantine's mother on the site of the apparition of the burning bush to Moses. Emperor Justinian financed its expansion in the current fortified monastery, also enclosing the Well of Moses. Only centuries after its foundation did the spoils of St. Catherine arrive at the monastery, changing its name. The monastery has always been among the most ancient and prolific scriptoria and icon-making centers. That is so awesome. Currently deactive, but look at these bonuses. Oh my god. That's insane. Wow. And then, at the same time, we are also at the Luxor Church. Many great monuments lie across Egypt, and Luxor Temple has stood for centuries as the finest example of ancient Egypt's legacy of brilliant engineering. Luxor is a testament to the power the pharaohs once possessed, but they are no more. Parts of the temple have been converted into churches. Additionally, devout Christians settle along the temple ruins. I wonder whether we can reform this into like an actual temple if we were to revive a variant of the Egyptian paganism. I doubt it, but, you know, still. Oh. And it just so happens that right here in Egypt, we actually filled our trade track. The Nabatean trade is full, and it gives us some major benefits. You love to see it. Compile the Nabatean agriculture. You will receive a powerful book artifact. You gain prestige and piety, and you can see it right here. We're writing the book that this man is known for. Ibn Wahshiyya is the man that wrote the Nabatean agriculture that tells us about his people from Mesopotamia, but also additionally, of course, astronomy, religion, and so on and so forth. I believe even today they're still having trouble properly dating it, right? Because he was referencing and he was taking from ancient texts, and we're trying to find out exactly from where those sources are from and so forth and so on. But right now, that doesn't matter. For years, these Nabati were derided by many as country bumpkins. The learned Ibn Wahshiyya has spent much of his life traveling around and gathering the wisdom of the ancient world, particularly that of his ancestors, to prove that they possess much the world could learn. Now, Ibn Wahshiyya has compiled what he has learned into a great tome of knowledge called Nabatean Agriculture. Those who have seen it believe it has many great insights into not only the field of agriculture, but also other Kasdanian areas. Let's take a look at this. Stewardship, learning, domain taxes, building, construction costs, and development growth up. I'm going to carry this, and I think simultaneously it has to be done. I will now reveal my true faith. I am a Kasdanian. Kasdanian, again, like we talked about, but if you didn't know about this, is the traditional faith, but in its current iteration of Nabateans. So that means it has influences of the Abrahamic religions, Hellenism, and so on. And I shall now convert. We are Kasdanian, and Tami Nimri, yeah, why don't you stay here? She has the Seljuk symbol for some reason. Look at you, she is accompanying us on this journey. We have finally taken the step after seeing the downfall, of course, that was induced by the caliphate being weak, seeing the Tulunids rising up because they cooperate with others. They are thinking more freely than the Muslims and the caliphate ever could. They are inviting Amalfi traders. They are making sure that the economy, that wealth, as prosperity is coming to their lands. I think we're getting the same idea. And you know what? Speaking of ideas, why don't we go to beautiful Kandaks right here and try to find out what ideas they have over there in Crete. I love these ships, by the way. This is actually the historical sail, the way it was built right here. You see this? And there you go. We have arrived and we are visiting Thieves' Hideout. Oh, that is so awesome. So, historically speaking, the Hafsid Emirate was a pirate emirate. They were hounding the Byzantine Empire from their base in Crete after they took it over. They were Andalusian refugees that made their way first into Egypt and then into Crete, and there they settled as a pirate nation. They couldn't be dislodged by the Byzantines for about 100 years, and they terrorized the economy of the Byzantines because, well, the economy primarily uses the Aegean Sea. It is a highway, right, to a certain degree. In Rice, so the mod that I would always say you should play with, you can cooperate with Mediterranean pirates, and they clearly took that decision. Though they are now indirectly subsidized by the state to prey on mutual enemies, the pirates of this region have only begun to establish a foothold in this part of the Mediterranean. This guy is working with the pirates. Historically, they were the pirates, but still, that is so cool. So we're now on a pirate island, and things are pretty interesting, because, well, they are new here. They are Mualadi, I believe. Yep, they are still Mualadi. It's a different kind. They are more respectful of our faith, our new faith anyway. But they are strangers to this land, yeah. They are a foreign ruling class right now, and they're trying to govern this. It has to be said, In-game, it plays no role whether Crete, whether the Aegean Sea is in your possession or not for your wealth, for your prosperity. It should. The Byzantines were so desperate to dislodge them. We have to talk, I think, a little bit maybe about the theory of how to defend against raiders in the Mediterranean and in the medieval period. When people talk about this, and when they talk about naval gameplay in Crusader Kings 3, obviously it is basically non-existent, right? What happens is you buy, you rent, whatever you want to abstract it into, your boats whenever you get on a boat by paying money. That is how it is abstracted away. The way, historically, you would go against raiders, however, is not the way most people imagine this. If you ask any Paradox player, they will probably tell you, well, pirates will show up right here with their navy, then I bring my navy, and then we fight in the sea tile, and that is it. That's not true. That is not how that works, okay? So let's clear this up a little bit, okay? When we go to the Roman period, what we have is, again, one unified empire. It dominates this ocean or this sea right here, and it knows that there won't be any hostile fleets because that is impossible. The entire area is controlled by friendly forces. Initially, while the Romans are still conquering the Mediterranean Sea, obviously they have fleets in particular that actually have to fight other fleets, and very often this happens, for example, via ramming tactics. So what we're talking about there is you have a relatively fast ship that can pick up speed and then ram another ship, and that is how you initiate combat and sink other ships, right? The longer we go, the longer the Roman Empire exists, the less does that need exist. When you think about anything anybody does and you have a pop culture understanding of it, you should always ask yourself, does that make sense? Like, is that what you even want to address? The Romans in the period of the Roman Empire controlling the entire Mediterranean had no interest whatsoever in building a fleet that goes around and starts nuking other fleets, because there were no other fleets. What they started doing instead is effectively a deterioration of fleets in this particular period. Instead, you create fast response squads, right? They go around and they destroy wherever they have pirate activity. They try to go into a pirate den, besiege it, take it down. That is what you do. They secure trade. They're kind of there as just effective to frighten people, and so on and so forth. You do sometimes have navy activities that are bundled up with the army. There's not really a separation between the two, because what the hell do you do in control of the seas? You know, no, you need to bring your army from A to B and then secure that army's supply line. That is what is going on there instead. Now imagine this. All of these squadrons make perfect sense, but then the Roman Empire falls. All of a sudden, there is no Roman Empire, there are other flotillas, and things have drastically changed. The Roman Empire, together with the Fatimids, the early caliphate, and the Norman Sicilians, is a special case. I want to highlight this because when we talk about the Mediterranean and the way travel works and the way the Hafsids could dominate the Aegean Sea, or at least disrupt the Aegean Sea for quite some time, we have to take this into consideration. The Roman Empire of the East, even in this period, had a standing navy. That means they have ships that are assigned specifically to navy tasks. Sometimes they act like levies, sometimes you have an actual standing navy that is always under the control of the Vasilevs. That is not every empire. The Fatimids had the standing navy, the early caliphate had a standing navy, and the Norman Sicilians, because of the way they functioned and where they were, also had a standing navy. West Francia, Lotharingia, East Francia, Al-Andalus, they did not have standing navies. And this is important to point out. There is no institution of the navy. Ships work differently. There are two things that I want to highlight, and that is, A, how do naval battles work in this period, and B, how do you actually act against enemy navies? What do you do? Now, categorically, naval battles did exist, but you have to imagine it very differently from the sea zones that you know from EU4, from any other game, and so on. Let's play this through for a second, right? Let's imagine you get news, you're in Constantinople, and you get news that there is something happening, there is a hostile navy that has been sighted right here in the Aegean. What do? How do you get there? When you get there, they're probably already gone. Do people then know where they are? Are you just going to go on a chase? Is that really what we're doing here? The answer obviously is no. We don't have radar, we don't have radio, we don't have anything to communicate once we are on our way. Once I send out the navy, I will be in Constantinople and I will have no idea whether they're succeeding or not until it is over. Which means sending out navies like that makes almost no sense, because we can come in like mosquitoes and, you know, prick you over and over again. The same thing, by the way, can be said as well right here for the Viking invasions. What would constantly happen is the Viking invasions would take place and, well, then they would leave. They would be gone, right? They raid you and then they immediately leave. This means it is totally inadequate to react to raiders, for example, by trying to get a sea battle. I know, EU4 and such always makes us think that's how it works. No, it's not how it works. That is not how it works at all. When sea battles happen, they happen very close to the coast, and more often than not because one navy caught another navy in a port. Navies rarely, if ever, meet outside of ports, you know, or at least very close by to ports. The reason for this is you literally cannot find them. Now, let's say you catch a navy. How do you fight? Does it differ from whatever is going on in the Roman period? And the answer to that is yes. It's an empathetic yes. Roman ships in the early and late Roman Empire were much lighter. They could pick up speed much more easily and ram. In this period, ships are built in a different fashion. Ships are built heavier and slower, which means ramming isn't possible. Virtually every single naval battle that we have in this period is actually a battle where we chain ships together and then use that as platforms, and we fight each other on these platforms. That is massively different from how a naval battle would take place in EU4, where you have cannons on your ships, and in the Roman period, where you have fast ships that can ram each other. Which means, if you ask for naval warfare in Crusader Kings 3, what you would really be getting is something that doesn't work against raiders, and something that is then just fought out as if you were on planes, except much tighter. I'm not against this, I'm just highlighting this. Naval battles, the way people think they happen, did not happen in this period. The most famous naval battles that keep getting quoted by people that want naval battles, and again, I want naval battles, but in a good way, if possible. The ones that get quoted a lot are right here in Scandinavia, and there were plenty of them, in fjords. Most of the naval battles that you can find there are in fjords. Most of those naval battles, even at some point, have a component where they're fighting on land, because they are so close to the land, right? I'm saying all this because, well, where does that leave us? If you have an enemy that has a proper navy, you might have a naval engagement. We have naval engagement between the Sicilo-Normans and the Byzantines. We have battles between the Byzantines and, of course, the Arabs. We have battles between the Normans and actually the Egyptians when they started raiding southwards in the period of Saladin before he became the leader of Egypt. We have all that stuff, so it is happening. But how do you actually act against the majority of what is happening with a boat, which is, of course, troop transfer and raiding? And the answer here is actually something that we can find in Al-Andalus. It is the Andalusians that actually invent the office of Admiralty, right? What do they do? Where does that come from? What does it all mean? The answer here is actually pretty straightforward if we just think about it for a second. The Andalusians, much like much of the Mediterranean and of course Northern Europe, are also victims of Vikings invading them, so they have to find a solution. They give a guy this admiral title and, well, believe it or not, he barely does anything on the sea. He is there for coastal defense. They build towers that will be able to communicate whether there is a hostile fleet, so if one part of the coastline knows it, the entire coastline knows it, and they will create certain squadrons in the major harbors of the empire, so of Al-Andalus, that then can go and immediately respond. When those squadrons come out, they're not coming out to fight the enemy on the sea, they are coming out to block their retreat. Imagine you are a pirate, and you come here to Aveiro, and you start going into this river, and then you start raiding the surrounding townships. Well, you will find that your boats have been burned, and that this river is now blocked by hostile ships. That is their task. So basically, you trap them once they're in there. This is very different from what people imagine. People largely assume that what happens is you take the pirates, you take the fight to them, right? You go in there, you sink their ships. That's not what happens. You take them while they are looting, because that is a long affair. The faster your towers can communicate that there is danger, the earlier will you be there, the better will you catch them, and then you can burn their boats and immediately crush them. This is exactly what the Anglos did. The Anglo-Saxons, after they grew wise to the raiding and, to the hostility of the Vikings, what did they do? Of course, they built a network of towers, and they made sure that they could catch them in the act, so while they weren't on their boats. Ultimately, why am I bringing all of this up? I'm bringing all of this up because this should really showcase why the Hafsids were as efficient and as difficult to oust as they were. The answer is really simple. It's because you can't catch their fleets, they're too fast, you don't have a proper system of response, it is not easy to do, and if you try to invade Crete, well, look at this, it is hell to fight in. These Hafsids were an absolute thorn in the side of the economy of, well, the Byzantine Empire, weakening them significantly. Now, sadly, none of that is, of course, reflected right here. If you play the Hafsids, you cannot raid because you're just Andalusian. There was a really great mod that allowed you to raid as a Cretan, right? I might install this as well, but basically the Hafsids here were as good as they were because navies don't work the way Paradox players think they do. Or at least they shouldn't work the way. Another really great thing here is actually the topic of the Greek fire, right? The idea that the Byzantines could go around and dominate and just set everybody on fire, it's also not actually true. I like the way they did that in Roads to Power, okay? Where you can set up the defense of the city of Constantinople with Greek fire. That is historically accurate. Imagine you have a liquid that can be set on fire and then even burns underwater. Are you really going to bring ships full of that with your navy? Like with your fleet? Far, far away? When you already have supply chain issues? When you already have difficulty and dangerous issues of certain things breaking? No, you're not. It's not feasible. It's not a wise thing. You could bring a much more impressive navy already to, you know, wherever you're going, and then try to use those ships that you can have instead of just one ship filled with Greek fire. And if that Greek fire, again, in a foreign port, basically explodes against your will, it's like, yeah, you are screwed. This weapon was not able to be used anywhere but where you were safe, where you had a very particular harbor that was nearby, where you could safeguard that with basically no risk and then ship it out if necessary. It is how they stopped various invasions here, don't get me wrong, but this, for a reason, was limited to Constantinople. The other thing is, of course, that fleets would move differently. They would largely move along the coastline, which is also why the Fatimids actually fared a whole lot worse when they were in Egypt, because Egypt itself is much more isolated. So now picture this. You don't have any effective response and you're being pressured by the Muslim caliphates. That is basically what is going on for the Roman Empire, and every threat to the Aegean Sea is existential, because it means that you might lose the access to Constantinople, and with that, of course, well, the actual supply to Constantinople. Constantinople is a very classic metropolis in the very classic sense, much like Rome. Rome required the transfer of grain from, for example, Tunisia or from Egypt to actually survive. Constantinople is very similar in that the city needs the actual supply, the trade, and so on and so forth from the surrounding regions. That is an existential threat. The Hafsids here should be priority number one for the Byzantines to get them away. Now, on top of that, it also should be said, there's a really interesting dynamic here that is not in the game at all. I hope that if we actually ever do get boats, that this will be in here as well. Boats obviously still play a big role to aid you in, for example, sieges, when it comes to sieging port cities, that kind of stuff, right? I hope that one day it will matter when I am in Egypt whether I own Cyprus or not. Right now, if I'm in Egypt and I want to invade the Roman Empire, I can easily do this. I go through the open ocean, which is very dangerous, especially in the winter. But okay, be that as it may. We don't even have compasses, by the way. We don't have compasses until the tail end of Crusader Kings 3's length. But basically, they go over here and then they just go to Constantinople, and that is it. Historically speaking, owning the Levant would open up raiding in Anatolia. Not owning it means you cannot raid it. Owning Cyprus means raiding Anatolia. Not owning Cyprus means you cannot raid it. I really hope that whenever we do get boats, that this will play a big role, because this is why the fight for the Levant was so important for everybody. Saladin actually leveled Gaza and Ascalon because those were viable raiding bases for the Crusaders. Everything up top here had difficulty of actually reliably being able to supply and, you know, to ensure that raiders would be safe while they were going for Damietta and so on. Which means, if there's a Crusader kingdom, I should be able to focus on this kind of stuff to take away their range, and then good luck raiding me. Again, sadly not the case in CK2 or CK3 or whatever, but I'm just saying, those are the calculations that these people would be making. Let's read the situation right now. The Abbasids are controlling the Levant. I would assume that their standing navy that they did have is deteriorating. They basically have nothing. The Ptolemies would be able to take this Levant in seconds because they can dominate the entire region, together with the Byzantines, if they had access to the Hafsids here and to Cyprus. Those should be the main focuses of the Byzantines, because then the entire Levant opens up all of a sudden to them as well to contest over with the Ptolemies. That would be amazing if we could actually have that. I would love that. Now, again, let me say, I'm not against navies at all. I'm not against naval battles, but naval battles are different from how you know them in EU4 or in Imperator Rome. Very different, because they are mostly platform-based, battles. And at the same time, I really wish that being in a coastal area really actually mattered, that range matters, that how much friendly territory I have where I can stock up before I go into hostile territory and then raid there. I really wish all of that stuff mattered. Right now, the way I read this is that Master Abu Bakr looks at the Roman Empire and says they are going to fall, because, yeah, they retook Kilikia, which is massive for their internal Anatolia security, but of course the Aegean Sea is in a desperate fight for survival as the Hafsids are raiding it. So we are learning something here about economic security and what to do there, right? Can we do... Well, I'm not going to do any of these. We're just going to move on immediately to the actual main target of today's video. I want to make my way to Sicily. Let's go to Syracuse. This brings us to another feature of Rice, and that is the Sicilian frontier. He actually implemented a Sicilian struggle. I love him so much. So Sicily is a super interesting area. Obviously, Sicily plays a massive role in the Roman Empire, right? It's a breadbasket. Sicily is a huge grain producer, and still is in this period. But in the Roman Empire, Sicily was unified. It was Roman core territory. That is it. That is the whole thing. That is not the case here. We got the Byzantines, we got foreign invaders. Italy, actually, you know, King Louis II the Younger came down all the way here to Bari to fight the Safdanid Emirate, right? Then we got the native Italian and Langobard population. We have the Muslims, of course, I mean, the Salamids and the Safdanids, right? This is a pivotal location. And it directly plays into something that I think also CK3 gets totally wrong, but it's difficult because they haven't updated these mechanics in ages, and that is Catholicism. Catholicism, the way it is here, is basically already this unified type of top-down, Pope-controlled religion that we know it as, of course, you know, from later periods of the Middle Ages and then the modern period, you know, EU4 and so on and so forth. That is not the case in this period. In this period, the Carolingians, so the people here northwest of the Alps, they are the ones dominating church doctrine. They keep holding church councils. They keep sending messengers to the Pope to say, hey, listen, we need you to give us guidance because we don't have it. We need to know how you pray, how you sing, what is important, how to interpret this and that and this. They are doing that. It's not the Pope doing it. We get it the wrong way around when it comes to analyzing the situation because we only know the Catholic Church in this modern capacity where the Pope and a central organization that he is the head of says this is how things work. In this period, that is not the case. The Pope is in a dire circumstance. We are in front of the massive Ungarnstürme, so the Hungarian storms, where they pillage essentially all of Western and Central Europe because they just have the capabilities of doing this for about 100 years. That is where we currently are. And the papacy itself is not safe. The papacy is so close, you see it right here, to Muslim hegemony. The Aghlabids, still loyal governors of course, the caliphate, even at this point, they are looking at a position where they want to take over the entirety of southern Italy, and if they did it, well, the papacy would be in a dire state. The interesting thing here to point out is that this means there's a lot of trade going on. There's a lot of trade going on. So technically speaking, all of this territory is de jure part of the Roman Empire. That is also where it was recognized. The same is true for Venice. De jure, the Roman Empire said, you are not permitted to sell the Muslims strategic goods. So that, for example, means stuff like wood, right? There's a lot of wood right here. There's a lot of wood that you can extract in this area and then ship out. The Venetians and the Amalfites, well, mostly took that as a suggestion. At some point, there's even a letter between the Pope and King Louis II where it is said that the Amalfites are devils that are working with the Muslims. Well, we are now aware of the importance of the strategic region that is Sicily, right? But there's more to this, of course. This is also a profitable region, right? Where there are many different people that can't work together. If you are the mediator, if you are the man in the middle, you're gonna print money. And that is exactly what Amalfi did. They continuously played both sides. They would trade with both sides. They would ignore certain, making certain goods illegal and so on and so forth. Sometimes they would help the papacy. Sometimes they would help the Muslims. They would ensure that they could be able to conduct their business. And that is, of course, despite the fact that, well, people saw Sicily either as the backyard of the Pope, so it should be Catholic and under his control, which ultimately, by the way, is what happened. The Normans got the official, yes, you can invade Sicily, you can take it over, you shall pacify it, and they did, which also, by the way, led to the downfall of Amalfi, and then they got hit by a typhoon, and yeah, they were done. They were cooked, okay? But the main idea here being Sicily has a mind of its own, and it has a rule set of its own. What happened here is that Amalfi basically started trading both with the Sicilians. They traded them important strategic goods, luxury goods, and so on and so forth. For them, it was safe to go through the Strait of Sicily. For others, not necessarily, right? We have still this difficulty. Trade immediately clamped down after the Roman Empire fell, but Amalfi makes it happen because they can work with Salerno, they can work with the Safdanids, the Salamids, and so on and so forth. This Sicilian struggle basically symbolizes all of this. This struggle is really cool because you have the different impacts, right? The different cultures and religions that play a role here, and depending on how important they are, they get different type of dominance levels. And the way this struggle is constructed is actually cooler than any other struggle in my mind because it can end and then be reopened. So if you get a fake ending, let's say imperiality, so the Byzantine Empire comes in, ignores Sicily, doesn't pay it its own respect, the struggle ends, but it can be restarted. You see it right here. The Sicilian frontier struggle can be restarted by rulers who take the decision to either begin occupation of the Sicilian frontier or revitalize the Sicilian frontier. Then over here we have periphery. If nothing important really happens, Sicily just becomes downgraded, becomes unimportant, right? Now I wish we could see it, but we can't see it. But there are also true endings where you can basically ensure that Sicily is important, that they are powerful, and so on. This region here is quintessential to the kickstarting of the economic engine of the Mediterranean. Amalfi started trading. They started trading with the Muslims right here. They brought down grain all the way to Tunisia, who desperately needed it at this point. They traded with the Egyptians, with the Romans, and so on and so forth. And I see now that my contracts are available over here. Ah, that sucks. Okay. Anyway, what we see right here is a region that is in an incredible period of upheaval and change. So when we arrive here we are doubtlessly welcome. Up here, it's becoming a lot more critical because we could be seen as the cooperators with Amalfi, with the Muslims, and so on and so forth. The reaction that we as travelers, whether we are pagans or not, whether we are Nabati or, you know, a local culture, that we are getting here should be different depending on these circumstances. Sadly, it isn't. But if you're role-playing, I want to keep this in mind, and you should have it in mind as well, that unless your nation here founds a compromise, like it could happen, right? I think it is very easy to imagine that, for example, if we are in the conciliation phase, if you are, for example, a Muslim traveler, you go to the north, they will much more easily accept you. If we are in hostility, that may not be something that is a good idea to go up there in that particular period. Again, the game sadly doesn't reflect it at all, but I would imagine that if you roleplay, you could roleplay into that right here as well as, well, over here. This struggle is going on. And if you show up in a hostile area after helping the enemies of those folks, then yeah, maybe you shouldn't do that for the sake of roleplay. This is a vital region, and I love that the struggle exists. I think we're going to close it out in a different playthrough. We can see this, for example, right away when we think about the Norman conquest of Sicily. Once they took over Sicily, they also actually monopolized the trade in grain, which was something that really bankrupted Amalfi because they were so deeply into that. Now, they monopolized it and they stopped trading with Tunisia. Tunisia immediately after, and this is after the Fatimids take over and then depart into Egypt, Tunisia has a massive wave of droughts, of basically famine, and they aren't getting any supply because the Sicilians refuse to trade with them. This region is so pivotal for all adjacent regions because if this strait is not safe, there will be no trade, at least not en masse, with the west and the east of the Mediterranean. Sure, you can go via Tunisia, but it is also very dangerous, especially if you are, for example, a Christian trader. This is such an interesting thing because the game doesn't depict it at all. In your roleplay, I hope that in the future you will consider it. Let's take a look, by the way, at the decisions that we have here. We can go fishing, sure. I can divine the stars, pray to a planet. Oh, I can support the medical school of Salerno. In medieval times, Salerno was home to a renowned medical school. According to legend, it was founded in the 9th century when 4 doctors, Pontus a Greek, Salerno an Italian, Abdela an Arab, and Helenos a Jew, happened to meet each other as they sought shelter for the night while traveling in Salerno. They then decided to work together to establish the school. Although this is likely a legend, let's be real, it does reflect the school's diverse milieu. It hosted teachers and students from all over Europe and the Mediterranean, including a number of women, and taught medicine from the Greek, Latin, Arab, and Jewish traditions. That is so cool, and it is a catalyst for the struggle as well, so I will immediately push further the struggle. And you can see right here that it works with, there you go, with this particular fame trade. Right, we have the Sicilian seigneur that can influence just how we're doing and where Sicily is headed and what type of ending decision we can take. I like the sound of that. Ties to the medical school of Salerno. Oh, that's so good. Thank you. Wow, that's amazing. I'm a good fella. You know what? I'm going to solicit charity as well. It seems like I am returning to Crete after they decided to actually give me a couple of contracts. I'll take it. It's fine. Let's explore the region a bit. What do we got here? We got a temple. Valley of the Temples. Oh, what is that? Let's take a look at this. A monumental complex on the sun-bathed rocky valleys of ancient Akragas with several colossal ancient temples. Chief of them, the Great Temple to Concordia. Oh, that's awesome. We're taking in so much former foreign culture now, which I think is really cool if we pair it up with us being Kasdanian, making it so that, well, effectively, we are exploring what has taken an influence on our culture and religion, right? Hellenism did influence our ancient faith, and I think that's pretty neat. Where do you need me to go? To Arik? Oh, we are going deep into Africa. That's interesting. Oh, that is cool. Yeah, I'm traveling. See, Africa is interesting. So the Aghlabids were a dynasty that were relatively strong. They were governors under the Abbasids. Then the Fatimids in 900 and later come in and start taking over with the aid of local Berber tribes. The Abbasids start building up their capabilities. And, well, we talked about it in the past, right? If you, for example, control Egypt but do not control Cyprus, raiding Anatolia is very difficult for you. If we're taking a look at the Fatimids right here, their position was amazing. Effectively, they were looking at being able to always raid or take over Sicily, which they also did, right? Now, with how profitable this was for them, because they knew very well that they have plenty of ocean that they could go into relatively safely and then start raiding Italy and so on, they built the city of Mahdia. Mahdia was super important. Right now, it shouldn't technically exist in this sense, but don't worry about it too much. It was super important because it was the central hub for repairing and building ships. Oh, look at these elephants, by the way. It was the central hub for the entire Muslim world in the central Mediterranean. In this period, we have, generally speaking, Muslim dominance, or at least some type of early hegemony, right? That is slowly but surely deteriorating. Sure, that is true, but right now we're still at the height. So they got Mahdia, and this Mahdia location is super, super important because it ensures that they can keep raiding, which in turn ensures that the Christians can never be safe. And that is massive. That is unbelievable. Think about it this way, right? You live in Italy, and you will never be safe. Why do you think Amalfi arranged themselves whenever they could with the locals, with the Muslims to the south? Because you could never be safe, period. There was never a question about it. Now, even after the Fatimids left, Mahdia was important. However, it was destroyed before the First Crusade. And this is really important. It was Pisa and Genoa, I believe, that raided Mahdia, that even stole some amazing loot from it, right? But basically they raided it and destroyed its potential forever, making it so that the entire central Mediterranean all of a sudden was a lot safer. That is one of the reasons that Jerusalem could be supplied from overseas, with, you know, the merchant republics becoming more and more important. Without destroying Mahdia, it's doubtful whether Jerusalem can even be supplied at all, if it can be reached on the regular, because the path there would just be so risky. I love that, because, well, right now we're seeing Mahdia here as our character still in the baby location, basically. It is not yet really developed, there's not a lot going on there, but the potential, the geographic viability of this is of course massive and already there. Now, while we are here in this struggle, why don't we make our way north? I really want to go to Napoli. Oh, I want to go to Napoli so bad. I don't think we've already been here. Don't care about losing stress, that's okay. We don't have to hire this, that's fine. I can take some danger, don't worry about it. Now, as we go further and further north here, people would doubtlessly kind of see us as weird going further and further, because technically trade here is, you know, very much something that is risky. You have to be under the organized protection of, for example, a city like Amalfi, and if you see people like us coming, that may bode rather ill, you know. It might mean that there is a raid coming in and so forth. Whereas down here, we probably wouldn't really arouse any suspicion, similar to like right here. All the way up here, it may very well happen. Now, in this timeline, it does seem like Louis II actually was kicked out of Bari. Historically, he went down there and he started taking it over, he started winning, and then the local Christian lords, the Lombards, were like, I don't like that. This guy's gonna come down here, and different from the Muslims, who might be, you know, a risk to us, but like, they're not taking over. He's gonna place his foreign soldiers, his North Italian soldiers down here, build his own forts, and all of a sudden, we're his vassals. I kid you not. He won in the name of the Christians. He won the wars down here. They imprisoned him and said, you can legally never come back. And he never came back. So I think Benevento, the Lombards, are probably very open to talking with Muslims, whereas the Pope in Italy probably isn't. They would not love to see us in there, even though, of course, we're no longer even Muslim, but for them that doesn't make a difference. We are heathens. Period. So in this melting pot, in this region that knows each other, where these different cultures and religions are constantly meeting and somehow have to arrange themselves, you may find extreme enemies, but primarily you will find people that kind of know how to deal with you and, you know, the people that are of your type. Whereas up here, oof, that is less likely. That is much less likely. It's a very similar story, of course, to the way that the Iberian struggle is implemented, but I think here it is slightly different because of the involvement of merchant republics and the economic interests in general. The Iberian Peninsula ultimately was not as relevant, you know, economically speaking, as the entire Mediterranean. So here, initially, you have Amalfi, but then you have other merchant republics, you have the newly arisen Fatimid Caliphate, and so on. Again, take that into account when you roleplay, because that is the story of this region without a doubt. Oh, and now we even get Prince Adelchis. Yeah, see, I wish we could build a reputation in a region. We now have Savdan on our client list. We will have Prince Adelchis on our client list. But it doesn't matter to any of them, because they don't understand that we are making friends in this region above cultural or religious lines. Listen, I will take these contracts, but it saddens me so much. It would be so awesome. But it is what it is. I'm simply going to educate his child which should doubtlessly create a long-term connection that I have with this dynasty, but... okay, apparently not. I almost feel like I want to stay in Sicily, you know this? I almost feel like I want to settle here for my people. I do want to go back home, but the Abbasids seem to be holding steadfast. And maybe what's even worse is, if I settle here, I would basically have to give up my religion, right? Like, none of my holy sites are nearby. That wouldn't really make that much sense. I don't know. Oh, and now I'm working for Amalfi itself. I'm gonna fangirl over this guy. I love the Amalfites. We don't have as many big names as we do for other merchant republics for the Amalfites, right? There's no big, oh yeah, okay, so these were the big merchant families, yada yada yada. We don't really know that much. We know that they bought a ton of land in southern Italy that was then confiscated by the Normans and all of their wealth was gone. We know that they had plenty of trade contracts with the west and the east, combined, of course, with Sicily and so on. And we know that they had a decent navy. Now, not nearly as big as where the merchant republics long-term would go, but that is because the merchant republics would only go there in the later parts of the medieval period, which we literally are not in yet. Merchant republics also didn't have big standing navies in this period of the, history. And look at how short this is, my god. That's unhinged. Okay. Anyway, so my point being, we have Amalfi, and it is a bit of a no-name. I think that is a big part of why the history of Amalfi is not nearly as well known, but also, of course, they were much earlier than when the big exploits of the merchant republic started. But Amalfi here is unique, because when the Normans came and took over Sicily, when the Normans monopolized the grain trade, for example, Amalfi was kind of already done. Largely because of geography, because these locations were now receiving trade that previously didn't exist, so we're talking about trade from Western and Central Europe. On top of that, we have Venice, of course, also getting this. They're getting more and more trade privileges, while Amalfi takes hit after hit after hit. We have the big downfall of Tunisia, of Mahdia, right? We have the Egyptians ousting the Amalfites. We have the Roman Empire becoming weaker in the context of trade and making it so that there is now a power gap that doesn't apply to Amalfi at all. Trade no longer dominates in this region in the Mediterranean. Right? We have internal trade here, we have internal trade there, and then for a while we have trade in this particular region here in general, but all of the trade would always go along this particular axis. That is no longer the case. So even before Amalfi falls, before we can ever learn any of their interesting names, well, effectively, they've already fallen. Because what is going on is that they're no longer relevant. Sometimes you just live in the wrong region of the world. It's the way it happens. Don't let this be seen as like a geographical determinism endorsement. It's more that like, you have these patterns. Of course, it matters where you live. And in this case, it did. Now let's go to Rome. Again, this might be troublesome if we actually did that. If there was any mechanic behind it, but there isn't. So I can just do that. See, and now we already here have also gained a couple of patrons. Eager Explorer, I do like that one. It's not a bad one. But I think I'm going to take the money here, sure. Why wouldn't you, right? See, and now is basically the time where we have to say that if we go any further north, there already is danger because of the civil war. If now foreigners show up, it could be seen as an affront. It could basically be seen as a provocation, potentially also even in like a bit of a worse light, where it is just said that we are mercenaries for the king, that kind of stuff. Obviously, there is no open hostility. Open attacks do not happen like that. That's just not how society works. However, we're definitely part of the out-group. We are not in the in-group, and that is always more dangerous than... well, if you're part of the in-group. Right here, they would say, yeah, they are locals, they can stay. Obviously, they're part of the legal, of the societal system. Up here, that is just not the case. That danger should play a big role in the game, but, sadly doesn't. I just want to bring it up because that's why I'm not going to go up there. That looks like a hell of a time, and not in a good sense. Let me instead visit Rome. Few places are as majestic as a castle, and Rome is no exception. Okay, well, there's no special text for Rome, that sucks. We're going to go ahead and not do any of these contracts. In fact, I'm actually going to head south again, towards Benevento. I want to take a look at my friends down in Bari and Benevento. Bari, tell me about a request. Could I actually purchase land from you? If I use my hook, which I believe I do, yes, I have a hook. You still don't want to... Oh, I could actually buy it if I pay double. I could get a county. God, I don't think I want to do this, just for the record. I'm going to go ahead. I could try to convert him. That's so stupid. If I use a hook, 6%. Oh my god. I don't want to do that. That is so silly. I could turn him Kasdanian for no reason. Literally for no reason. I'm going to make a request, and I would have liked to get money. He's a Lombard. I don't even think they have special units. Oh, they got Arimani. Interesting. Looks like a stock standard unit here. Ah. This guy got nothing for me. Do you have anything? Oh, he has another contract. Escort, okay, well. 32 bucks, come on. I'll do the escort contract, sure. Why not? Where are we going? Oh, we're going to Constantinople. Yes. I will bring Mufti Abianos over there. And I think I'm going to move the entire camp. And that actually puts us in a position where we are going to travel the Via Egnatia, the one that I just put in, like I said. Now, this is exciting because, obviously, well, the Romans here are very stable in this particular timeline. And maybe more importantly, not that impacted by the Hafsids, because they were able to conquer Cilicia, securing this entire region from, you know, from inland raids, which means they can focus on the Hafsids, probably neutering their impact. And with the Via Egnatia, we can go through this dangerous terrain very, very swiftly. This is why Sicily is so connected to the Roman Empire. And now we're going to see the city of the world. We're going to see the beautiful, beautiful Constantinople. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hagia Sophia Cathedral. We are making money now off of meeting interest points. This is insanely goated. This setup is absolutely insane. Let me just ask you right away. Yeah, look at that. Here we get special text. We enter the great city of Constantinople. It is no wonder. This is the jewel in the crown of Vasilevs. And I look yonder through to the heart of the city. The Hagia Sophia and Hippodrome readily available on the horizon. I start to feel quite small in awe of these monuments. Do you have a learning contract for me? Any learning? No? Okay, well, you know what? I'm not doing the treasure map stuff. Don't worry about it. I'm going to collect some taxes. Why not? Yeah, and as we are doing this contract, just look at that. The Byzantine Empire and Constantinople really is a special place. You can see these tiny towns over there as well. And if we actually head all the way over here... Oh, it's snowing. Look at that. Yeah. So glad I'm not in the winter realm right now. If we take a look at Thessaloniki, I guess, and then further down here, we got beautiful, beautiful Athens. Oh, I love the way that looks. I really love that. This map could be so much more beautiful if they released some visual DLC. Maybe one day. Maybe one day. But yeah, obviously, with a resurgent Roman Empire, they would actually be quite happy to see us. They wouldn't really care. They meet a lot of pagans. They are used to being in the frontier or at the frontier. And at the same time, we are far from hostile. Not to mention, oh my god. The Armani Emirate is actually free now. It looks like they had like an independence faction. The entirety of Cilicia could soon be Roman, at which point the Roman Empire is safe. That would be a reconstituted East Roman Empire, really. If they pacified Sicily beyond that, that would be even better, but you gotta take what you can. Alright, and now we have finally made it to Exalted Among Men, which should allow me... Oh, is that only kings? Do I need to be a legendary figure for emperor contracts? He's a murderer. Who did he kill? Wait a minute. He doesn't have a kill list. Then who... How does that work? Huh. What are the Fatimids doing here? You were in Persia. You were all the way down close to Jerusalem. Interesting. I wish I actually did something, you know that? Like that they would actually invade. That would be so cool. They already exist now, but they just don't do anything. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go back home and we're going to try to reclaim our territory. We're going to do this way through the overland route here. It is relatively safe. And we're going to cross through the gates of Cilicia. You can see it right here. And then we can take back the major road all the way over there. Oh, and look at that. We got some nice learning contracts. Yeah, the Byzantine Empire in that road mod is... I turned it into, like, super roadified territory. Look at this. You see this stuff? It's crazy. I gave them so many roads because they had them. What are you going to say? You know, they were quite the well-maintained empire. It was necessary at the end of the day as well. How do you oppose these forces to your east unless you have good infrastructure? Many other territories weren't that reliant on it, but the Byzantines definitely were. Alright, and I think what I'm going to start doing now is, I'm going to ask for men-at-arms, so that hopefully I can get these, pick these up for free basically, right? And then we can start building that up so that I can start taking over some land. Look at that, we got some siege, and we got some Archetai. Not the best stuff, but yeah, and there you can see it again. The Cilician Gates, like I said, very important. We struggle through the Guardian Passes, the craggy defiles between Asia and Europa. Above, in wind-wrecked heights, amidst stones, Greek eyes watching. Clever, coarse men infest the Cilician Gates, keeping a vigil for the Roman Basileus. From their high force, ambushes strike out at brigands and poor innocents alike, all supposedly in defense of the heartland. They were very important for, you know, defeating the Rashidun Caliphate, especially early on. And, well, you can see it. You can see it right there. Okay, what do we have now? We got Mubarizun and we got Skutatai, Archetai. We have mostly a mixed Abrahamic and Greek legion. That is exactly what I'm talking about. That is so good. I really like that. Oh, and look at that. We made it south. before winter reached us. I am so glad, because I was not in the mood for winter. Why don't we actually go for the different route now? Let's go to Haran. That is, of course, where the where that university is, or, you know, the Neoplatonic academy that we were supporting. I like that idea. Oh, and I forgot about this, but we can also do this one. The Travels of Abu Bakr Ahmad ibn Wahshiyya. We're writing a second book, I guess. I've seen wondrous things, and I will be putting this into a book. Now, this book is actually incredibly good. Like, it's insanely good, because take a look at this. If you are not me, you get plus 40% monthly lifestyle experience. If you are me, you at the very least get monthly prestige plus 20%. It is so, so good. You will hear it for yourself, and it will surely fill you with wonder. They are stout fighters, excelling in courage and hardihood. Let me explain how it is that they can endure more than any other man. Often enough, if need be, they will go or stay for a whole month without provisions, drinking only the milk of a mare and eating wild game of their own taking. For tell it how I might, you never would be satisfied that I was keeping within truth and reason. We must be talking about maybe the Sicilians, maybe the Varangians. Could be, right? Who are we writing about here, I wonder? Interesting. The way we perceive this world, the difficulties that we saw here, that we encountered in Egypt, this thriving new direction, free from the caliphate, the Hafsids raiding the Romans. We're writing all of that down from our point of view. I love it so much. That is so good. Why don't we go and actually settle in Baghdad right now? Alright, and so we return home. I mean, it took us plenty of time, but we are back in Baghdad. And now the big question is, what do we actually do, right? We get a neat contract right here with the current emperor, who, interestingly enough, is not the caliph. He already dethroned him, so that is already done. Caliph Al-Mu'taz the traitor. Yeah, he's just a duke now, which is obviously terrible for him. It could be good for us. I'm going to go ahead and fight corruption here for the current emperor of the Arabian Empire. Oh god. For this mission, we often have to travel like super far. Let's hope that it's not that, like, you know, all over the place. But my point is, how do we end this? Maybe I'll just take over the entire empire. We'll see, okay? Oh my god, it is all over the place. At least travel is safe, because, you know what, actually I have to get rid of these mercenary guards. Okay, it's relatively safe. This is such a cursed mission when the empire is huge. Which it is, in this case, believe it or not. Oh my god, we finished it. We made so much money. Listen, I am not at all mad about that. It's just... there was a lot of stuff, and he loves me now. Look at this. Oh my god, okay. Request invasion sponsorship. We could try to do this. Oh, you know what? I should actually become friends with, like, the Byzantines and then try an invasion sponsorship against the Abbasids. But now that I'm thinking about this is only for a duchy, right? Adventure... oh, for any adventure invasion war. Okay, wait a minute. Now I need to double check this. I really like this guy as well, by the way. Look at that. It's an artifact delivery. Why is he gray? Not is alive filter. He gave this contract, then he died. Okay, well, I'll see you later, buddy. Okay, I think I figured out what we're going to do here. It's a bit ridiculous, but I will be doing it regardless. Okay, I want to reform the faith, if possible, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to build an army, I'm going to invade this guy, then I'm going to invade the kingdom of Mesopotamia, and that's it. I think that sounds pretty good, right? So what we're gonna do is... it's a stupid ending to this, because admittedly, like, we are not the guy that goes around and just invades people, but I guess now we are. You are what you make out of yourself, right? That's what they say. Alright, and with that, let's see what we get here. Do I take control of everything? Yeah, we have the entire duchy under control. Of course, many of them are different religion, yada yada yada. I'm gonna negotiate releases here. We're gonna demand conversion, and that is basically about it. I could try to banish you, but... honestly, I don't care. I think we'll be okay. Now this guy, also demand conversion, get that done. How do I have 2 legend seats for my holy life? What happened? Man, I am especially holy, it seems. Oh my god, it just keeps giving me these. I just keep getting events that my nature was recognized. Oh my god. Okay. I'm gonna usurp this. Get out of town. Mesopotamia. Get into town. Let them see their new king. Just a box standard throne room. What are you gonna do? I am going to reform Kasdanianism. And let's take a look at what we should actually be doing here, right? Pluralist is fine. Head of faith, I would like one. We could have a spiritual one. Kind of cute, right? Kind of cute. I have this funny image in front of me where, like, we meet one of our ancestors and they're like, this is what you got from studying our faith. Are you crazy? Are you insane? Well, it is what it is. We are getting the job done, as you can see here. We are changing everything for no good reason because, well, this is where we're going to end it, obviously. Yeah, this is fine. I'm going to initially just go with exactly this. Let's reform it, baby. Only 3 of 23 vassals will convert. Yeah, they don't love me. That's fine. Don't worry about it, okay? They do not love me. I can consecrate my bloodline though, and I will immediately do that. I am the savior. I'm here to deliver all of you. It is true. High Priest Abu Bakr Ahmad, the Chaldean of the Castanian High Council. Welcome back. Alright, but I have created the worst ahistorical version of Kasdanianism. Don't you worry about it, okay? I hope that you take something away from this when it comes to role-playing, to what you can do and so on. I had a great time playing this character. He is a lot of fun, and then comes the nonsense. Either way, we explored so much of the world here. I'll see you later, alligator.